Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Ginger episode of The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. And here's your host, Alan Mosley.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. I am your host, Alan Mosley.
You are the host.
Have you already interrupted me?
Yes, I have.
This is going on 2 weeks in a row now, where you and I, we've had some communication issues.
It's all my fault.
Yeah, well, hold on. Now that we're on this, you know what else I've noticed?
What?
You're not setting up your camera.
No, I'm not.
What's wrong with you?
I'm ugly.
Are you shy?
No, I'm just not as hot as you on camera, man.
Shit.
Actually, I'm lazy. It's because it just takes us so long to set it up, and I'm just not that important, so...
You know, normally when we do the intro of the show, like, we'll have some witty banter, and then I talk about our links, and then I introduce our guest if we have one. But we've already had a couple of weird giggles in the ether, and so people are probably wondering, what's that sound?
Well, that's me. I'm just off camera because I'm too lazy to set up a camera when we're
that's
setting
you.
up. Yeah.
That's you.
I'm the producer
That's your
guy.
feminine giggle, is it?
Feminine giggle? I don't know about that.
Guys, thank you so much for joining the show. You can follow us on social media, which is facebook.com/TGS Alan Mosley. Twitter is @AlanMMosley, but you don't have to do any of that. You just go to our website, which is thegoldstandardpodcast.com.
That's right.
As well as, if you appreciate the show and want to show us your support, you can do so by becoming a member of our Patreon, which is patreon.com/TGS Alan Mosley. So really just go to any website that you like and do /TGS Alan Mosley and see what comes up.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Doesn't get any easier than that.
Well, you say it's that simple, but we're not rich yet, are we, Blake?
Far from it, brother.
Okay. Well, guys, we have an awesome guest for you today. Our guest is a reformed neoconservative turned anarcho-capitalist. She is active in the liberty movement in Northeast Ohio. I'm sorry about that, Tricia. And is a Mises Caucus member of the Libertarian Party. We had Michael Heiss last week.
Yeah.
Tricia manages social media marketing for several libertarian pages and uses personal social media to bring libertarian ideas to a broader audience through humor, culture, and infotainment. Tricia has a background in music and theater. Oh, we'll talk about that too. And as a classically trained vocalist, she works in sales when she is not abolishing the state. You can find her on Instagram, Tricia.Stuart, Twitter @TriciaArchy, Facebook, Tricia Stuart @GingerArchy, and her new website, www.gingershenanigans.com. Tricia Stuart, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Alan.
Well, I would have to say you're the most festive a guest that we've ever had appear on the show.
I appreciate that.
Well, so at the time that we're recording this, because I know this is shocking to some people at the audience, but this is recorded and not. It's only live when you see it, but this is recorded. You got that?
Yes.
Okay. But this is the day before the greatest day of the year. This is July 3rd. But Tricia, you're already in full swing. I see that.
I am preparing on Independence Eve to get my freedom on tomorrow.
Wait, hold on. Are you trying to tell me you don't have your freedom on 365 days a year?
This is true. I found my freedom actually not too long ago. And I didn't find it overseas. I actually found it at the local Walmart.
Okay. You know what my favorite ones? You know what my favorite ones are though? Have you seen the American flag flip-flops?
Yes.
Isn't that really disrespectful to the flag though? To be walking on them as shoes?
Is it more disrespectful than an American flag thong? That kind of goes up your butt.
That is true. Well, I mean, it depends on if you think your butt or the ground is more or less respectful. But,
this is true.
So, Tricia, I had told you before we started, I was going to start the interview with a troll question and end the interview with a troll question.
I love it.
So this is how we're going to start. So, Tricia, you said in your intro that you're a reformed neoconservative.
Indeed.
Now, would you identify as an anarchist?
I am a full-blooded anarchist.
You're
yes.
a full-blooded anarchist, but you're also a woman.
I am, which... What are you getting at?
Well, I say that because, of course, for one, I'm a little bit skeptical that you do as much work that you do in social media because, as we all know, there are no women on the internet.
This is true.
Yeah.
I don't have a penis.
But there's also no women libertarians. That's also true. So you're batting 1,000 on all these different unicorns.
Awesome.
So you said reform neoconservative. So tell me what Tricia was. Tell me about the old Tricia, and then tell me how we became the new Tricia.
Sure. So I grew up in a really politically charged household. I am a Christian, although I kind of went to agnosticism back to Christianity. And so we were the typical evangelical Christian family, very politically active. So I was a hardcore neocon, really heavily involved in the Republican Party. I was a delegate for a while, and I worked for the campaign of John McCain and Sarah Palin. Please don't hate me. Yeah, I was hardcore. But I guess at the foundation of what I believed, I always kind of doubted things. And then I was not on the Ron Paul train. But I would say during Obama's first election, I started to question my belief system and why I was so scared of this man coming into office. And then it just kind of led me down the trail of understanding what liberty was. And slowly I moved to become a big L libertarian. And then obviously now a full-blooded anarcho-capitalist. So my parents are super proud.
I'm sure they are.
Yes.
Well, now that's an interesting evolution, because I try not to hate on people too much for being minarchists, although they are just mini statists. But I try not to hate on them too much, because I feel like something that sort of we kind of lose the forest from the trees a little bit when we judge people that way, because it takes time and study to really wrap your brain around the anarchist perspective, right?
Right. And I think there's such a I wouldn't say a large part of the movement, but this 10% that makes a really bad voice and tone for the 90%, that just as soon as somebody is questioning liberty or coming over to it, they just smack them down with anarchy. And I think that's a really bad idea, and that's not a way to entice people over. So, which is part of what I had mentioned earlier, I'm joining We Are Libertarians podcast, and I think they do a really good job of kind of nurturing people over into the liberty movement, and there's definitely a place for that. There's also a place for anarchist philosophy and hardliners to keep us pure. I think understanding the difference and being able to articulate that is super important in the movement.
Well, I mean, I can see where it's important to articulate that, but I think one of the major issues that it's never going to go away is you're always going to have the people, the what I like to call the hashtag vote harders. There's always going to be the people that are always, because they want to win, right? Who doesn't want to be on the winning team? I mean, there's a reason why the Yankees have a lot of fans, right, outside of the city of New York, because people like to be winners. And so you're always going to have those people that are trying to win elections, because it's just ingrained in everything they've ever been taught, everything they've ever heard from anyone else, that, well, if you want change, you got to go get out the vote and win. Versus you're going to have those neckbeard libertarian anarchists like myself, who I don't vote. I don't support political candidates. I don't support political candidates on the show, and everybody on Facebook who sends me, everybody who's ever friended me who sends me like so-and-so for district such and such, I deny every single one of those, because I'm all about the ideas, and and it's not about being anti-people. I'm more than happy for those people, but I don't support them politically. Does that make sense?
That makes absolute sense. And I do work with the Libertarian Party. I'm a member of the Mises Caucus. However, I do vote strategically, and this gets brought up a lot when I go on like maybe an agorist podcast or an anarchist podcast. I don't think it's wrong to vote for Ron Paul, because I don't think that he was going to win, and I think that he had such a bullhorn on the platform of party politics. So when I go to vote, if I think somebody could actually win and dominate someone else through violent force, I just wouldn't vote for them. The cool thing is about the LP, we ain't gonna win.
But you say that though, but there are people that are hardcore politicos that would say that, well, we have no use for you then, because we're here to win elections. And that's what political parties are about, is promoting politicians. So there are hardcore people in the party that would be unhappy with what you just said, because they're not, promoting the ideas isn't good enough for them. They want to win. And so I guess we're still right back around to that eternal struggle between the ones who it's easy to say principle over politics. That's easy. It's easy to say words, but it's different to really live that life as opposed to just say those words. What I'm afraid of is it reminds me of like a lot of people who were on the Ron Paul bandwagon, not 12 years later, were supporting Bernie Sanders. And it just goes to show you that, for one, people never understood anything. They're not
right.
principled. But two, they still want to win, right? They're still trying to support. They're still trying to back a man in a suit. They're not trying to back liberty. They're trying to back a guy. And I think that's where there's a disconnect in the community.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, and I think that as far as third-party politics go, you can bring in a lot of people that feel disenfranchised. And so those people that would later back Bernie are that sect of people. Now, the difference being is, are you going to grab them, take them under your wing, and teach them about the principles of liberty, or are you just going to use them as a vote? And so I think there's a huge opportunity there. Obviously, not everybody who thinks that maybe I'm not an R&D and I'm going to follow the Libertarian Party is going to be a liberty-minded thinker, but I think we have a huge opportunity to cultivate a liberty movement there. That's what I would do. There's always going to be statists, and statists are going to state. I mean, there's always people, they're gonna, yeah. And so there's always going to be people who are going to look for somebody to tell them what to do and what to think. The difference being, if we can guide them in the principles of liberty, then we can bring over those people. It's not going to be a 100% conversion, but we definitely have an opportunity there, and that's why I am still part of the LP.
So something that we had talked about before doing the show today is you had asked me if I wanted to touch on the Democratic debates.
Yes.
And I do. So we haven't done that yet. We have not had a debate conversation on the show since this first round. But of course, it's tough because the people who rushed to get one out did it right after the first 10. But there was the second 10. What was it, the following night? So I watched the following night. I was on Lions of Liberty and had to sit through that. I have fourth stage cancer, so this may be my last interview. Okay, so well, thoughts and prayers.
Thank you.
Let me start off with a softball. Who would you say are your bottom three worst? I mean, it's a whole field of authoritarian nightmares. But if you had to say, if they gave you the choice and said, look, one of these bozos is going to win, but we'll let you pick three who have zero chance to win. Which three would you pick?
Surprisingly, I would say Yang.
So you're not on the Yang gang.
No, I obviously I'm not a fake libertarian where I'm like, he's libertarian, but I do think he's a little more intelligent and thinks differently. I think that he probably would rather have taken a nap than been on that debate stage. His charisma was zero.
Yeah.
I mean, I was kind of disappointed in that. I would say Joe Biden has not suffered adversity in all his years, and he suffered a little bit through Kamala, which was very enjoyable, even though she's a piece of garbage. But he definitely failed. And Bernie was kind of all over the map. And then all the other random guys who are like just basic suburban white guys.
Yeah.
So
I have to say, I think if I was going to pick my three, I'll give an honorable mention. I don't have to pick Elizabeth Warren to lose because I can tell you she has a 0% chance to win.
I would agree.
Because she is a broken woman. Donald Trump has broken her as a politician, as a person. So I don't have to worry about her. I would say Joe Biden. As one of my bottom three, just because it blows my mind that there are leftists out there. I mean, as we speak, there are millions of leftists out there right now that in their minds, they think I'm anti-establishment. I fight the man. I don't support the status quo. But they'll either vote for Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders. That's as status quo as you can get. That's when you look that up in the dictionary, it's Joe Biden. I mean, this is a guy who's been in politics for 50 years, 40 years. And also too, and Kevin Gutzman pointed this out, I think it's probably been about that many years since he won a contested election. Because of course he's run for president before and he lost those. And he's been, of course, he's been in Congress for a bajillion years, but his seat basically hasn't really been attacked since he first won it. So when you look at it from the perspective of he basically was a shoo-in incumbent for many terms, and then he lost all of his other previous presidential runs, he hasn't actually won an election where there was a fierce competitor in 30 years. And I think people sort of kind of forget that, I don't care about politics, but I take interest in it the way Lou Rockwell does, where it's just I just enjoy the theater, and I can't. It's so like as a football fan, it's like throwing stats at you on ESPN. It's that, did you know that Joe Biden hasn't actually won anything significant in like 30 years? I'm just saying.
No, and it was funny you mentioned that because he harkened back to things that happened a really long freaking time ago, and it was just really sad.
It's almost kind of weird. I know that these people have handlers, and I know these people do debate prep and stuff like that. However, I think some of them, like, the hubris is so strong. I think some of them think, I've been doing this my whole life, I know what I'm doing. And it kind of shows that they're not as prepared as you would think. Like, if it were you or me and they told you, hey, we're going to put you on stage and you're going to be on national television for a couple of hours, you'd want to be prepared, not just to win against your opponents, but to not make an idiot of yourself.
Right.
Some of the, more than a few of these jokers said some kind of cringy statements. And this was the very first debate.
Yeah, Alan, I want to say something that happened on and I don't think a lot of people brought light to it, but Joe Biden was talking about insurance companies. I mean, health insurance. Mm-hmm. What was funny is they kind of went to the far end of the spectrum, and it wasn't even arguments for, it was like universal health care or a mixed market, which are better. It's like, this whole thing is fucking crazy. But Joe Biden brought up this point. He's like, I think that people that work for health insurance companies, if they promise a product and they don't produce, that they should basically be jailed for it. Like, that was crazy as shit. I don't know if you saw that.
Well, can you imagine that standard being held to public servants?
Yeah. Well, they would all be in prison.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? Imagine a world where they said, okay, from the moment you take your oath of office, this is like the Night's Watch, motherfucker. If you don't obey the Constitution, like, off with your head type situation.
I'm ready for that. Let's let out all the weed smokers and put them all in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that kind of struck me, since we're talking about like really kind of eye-opening statements, I don't know if she said it in the debate or if it was like a little follow-up that she did. But Kamala Harris had made the statement. Of course, she's signaling to the anti-gun people. She's signaling, right? I mean, because let's be fair. That's what all of this is signaling. Mm-hmm. All politicking is signaling.
It was a giant virtue signal.
Yeah.
20 out of 10.
And so she had made the statement that if elected, I would give Congress 100 days to put gun legislation on my desk. And if they fail to, then I will take action. What the hell does that mean?
Civil war.
Yeah. Well, that means a pen. It means the power of the pen of the president.
No. Well, exactly. And so that brings up kind of two interesting questions for me. Is that one, when you make that statement, because she's proud of that, right? Like, she thinks she's being a strong leader to say that. So for my first question would be, is that if you feel that you have the right as president to just circumvent Congress and do whatever you want, why are you waiting 100 days?
Well, this is true. That's a very good point. Do it on your first day out. If you're going to be a term elected monarch, then just go out the gate strong on it.
To me, it kind of sounds like for one, it's just a baseless threat, right? Like that's what it really is. But you're right. To me, it kind of. It's trying to have your cake and eat it too. If it's trying to say, well, look, I wanted Congress to do their job, but so you're putting the weight on them, right? Like, well, since Congress failed America, I'm going to swoop in and save the day by using executive power.
Which is what every party does.
Yes.
So, we've held the House and the Senate and the executive branch, but yet there's always some way for the R's or the D's to blame the other party. And it's a useful scapegoat. It's worked in the past. There's always a monster to fight against. And that's the duality of, our political process right now, which is really stupid because they're all the same damn person. Yeah. But that's how you keep people looking over here when the government is doing this over here,
Yeah. So the three things that I kind of walked away from the debates, and I'll be honest, I watched mostly highlights. I didn't watch the whole thing start to finish.
Be glad,
they
Alan.
had some
I'm glad that you
microphone
don't have cancer.
issues, and I mean they had a bunch of weird. By the way, just really quick, the overall production of the debates really wasn't all that great.
No.
Like for multi-million-dollar national television, it was kind of mediocre. Just saying.
I would agree.
So the three things I walked away from is. There was three different areas that different candidates were trying to signal that they were the leader. Like I lead my contemporaries in one of these three areas. One is anti-gun. One is climate change.
Yeah.
I forget which one it was. It might have been Mayor Pete, who he was trying to signal that, look, I'm the climate change candidate. Eric Swallowswell from California. He was the one. He's trying to signal I'm the anti-gun candidate. And I guess Kamala made the anti-gun statement, but of course she was a fucking cop. She was a prosecutor. I think she's trying to be the law and order candidate because that's kind of like her wheelhouse.
Which, Alan, if you know anything about me, cops are my biggest point of contention. And so to me, she was the largest threat on that stage. But she was also had the most charisma, which scared me.
Yeah. I mean, I could see that, and that's a shame because, I mean, she's a monster. Like, she's literally a monster. And then,
but she had to ride a bus. So
yeah, exactly.
That's all null and void.
And then the last one is the free stuff, is the giveaway. So whether it's student loans, whether it's basic income, whatever it is, it's who gives away the most stuff, who bans the most firearms, who deals with the environment. Those are like the major tenets of the left wing in this country. And what kills me about that, and I want your thoughts on this, if those are the three things, if the three things are universal basic income or just welfare, gun control, and climate change, if those are your three things, they don't stand a fucking chance.
I would quite agree. Two points to that. Number one, there was a funny UBI battle between Yang and Kamala. It's like, who's going to give you more? The window is so far to the left with them that they're not addressing issues. And then they tried to make a boogeyman of Trump, which had worked in the previous election cycle, because obviously he's kind of an idiot and, he speaks off the cuff. But I found that them trying to blame him for things that are obvious issues that have gone on long before he was in there, I found it very disconnected, and I don't think that they succeeded in that. And I think you're really correct in your assessment that they actually aren't addressing what the American people have issue with, and they failed completely. I don't think they stand a damn chance against him. I really don't.
Well, when Lou Rockwell's on the show, because he's Mr. Political Theater himself, when he was on the show, he had said that, when you're in the primaries, the candidates are going to rush to the polar ends. So if you're watching, I mean, Bill Weld's a joke. So let's face it, Trump is unopposed. He's unopposed, so he's the Republican nominee. So if we're only looking at the Democrats in the primaries it's going to be a race to see who can go furthest left. But whoever wins that race, let's say whoever wins the furthest left race gets the nomination. As soon as the general runs around, they're going to be streaking as far back to the middle as they possibly can, because now they're trying to win over middle America votes and that sort of thing, battleground states and the like. And so it's this weird phenomenon, and we see it every year. And I guess, because we have a Republican sitting president, I tend to hit the Republicans a lot. When Obama was in office, I was making fun of Democrats. When Trump's in office, I'm making fun of Republicans. So it kind of goes vice versa during the elections. Since the Democrats are the ones doing the dog and pony show, we're really spending more time on them. But it's just because their debates are on TV and all that.
And it's entertaining.
Yeah, and it's entertaining. That's right. And so I guess ultimately what I'm getting around to is that when you see all those candidates on stage and when you see them racing to the left, what I hope, and this is I'm a naive piece of shit for thinking this. What I hope is that I hope that there's some young leftist voter out there who, in their mind, they're thinking, I really like this whoever, Mayor Pete, or I really like this Yang. I'm a part of the Yang gang, and they're going to watch their candidate run left, and they're going to support him. And then when the general runs around, they're going to watch their candidate that they just supported going left run right back to the middle, and they're going to think to themselves, wait a minute, that's not what I supported. And then let's say their candidate wins, and then when they win, they're basically just Trump part 2, Obama part 3, Bush part 4, Clinton part 5, Bush part 6. And then they think, wait a minute, when I voted, the picture I had in my head of who I was voting for and who actually sat in the chair are totally different people, and it happens every time. I mean, I can't think. I mean, I'll be 34 this year. I know that there has not been a major national candidate in my lifetime who ran on a platform of X and was X when they took office, and yet. But we have to relearn this lesson. Or I guess what I should say is we don't relearn this lesson, but the next generation does. So the next generation of voters will learn that lesson, and the next generation, they'll learn that lesson. And you and I have to sit here and hope that some percentage of that new generation of voters who was sold a bill of goods that was false will come around.
So I think that's an excellent point, and I think what you're looking for is a left version of the Ron Paul movement. So it's people that are disenfranchised by the mainstream D crowd, and basically young voters, which would be below the millennials. What's the next generation called again? I can't remember.
What's after millennials, Blake?
I don't remember.
Thanks for nothing, Blake.
Is it Z? Is it Z?
Z.
Yeah.
Okay. So Gen Z, maybe they will become disenfranchised because they haven't known losing so much. I mean, obviously the Trump thing, but I don't think most people cared about that. So perhaps it could. So perhaps somebody like Yang or Williamson can come along, because I don't think Bernie has a chance anymore, can come along and get really disenfranchised with the establishment and maybe come over to Liberty through that conduit. So hopefully, but I don't know,
Yeah.
that they could all just go and vote D because that's what they do.
It's something that I've taken heat for saying on this show, and I stand by it, is that the overwhelming majority of people have no principles, and I mean it when I say that, because and I base it on two things. One is, if you're the type of person that if there's a list of 10 different issues in life or in politics or whatever, you have to really seriously consider each one individually. To me, that says you don't have any principles, because you don't have like a foundation that's helping to guide your decision making. You're just kind of just in the wind, throwing a dart on the board and seeing where you land on each issue. And the second thing is, in context more with this conversation, is that though you and I would love to have more brothers and sisters who believe in liberty, the reality is that there will be a lot of people who will vote D this time because the R didn't give them everything they wanted. And then the D will win, and then when the D doesn't give them everything they want, they'll vote R. And when the R doesn't give them everything they want, they'll vote D. And never in that stream of time did it ever occur to them that this was all a waste.
Right. Well, and that's the, hey, look over here, the DNR paradigm, where if we could just bring some people over to thinking about liberty and letting go of the idea that it's going to make a difference or count if they vote one way or the other, when they're going to elect basically the same person with nuances, certain nuances. Well, that's where our job is as liberty people. And so that's why I still do stuff with the LP, but I also use other platforms. But yeah, I would say people aren't necessarily principled. They're stuck in this idea of statism. Like, this is the only frame of reference they have is, we have this duopoly and which do I pick, and this team mentality. And I do think there is an opportunity for us to kind of, since we've gone so far, like as to Trump, who is just, he's a magnificent bastard. Let's be honest. He really is. Which is why, see, I'm wearing my Trump on a tank with an assault rifle.
Yeah.
Yes. Which I'm not a Trump supporter, but this is my ironic 4th of July Star Spangled Spectacular for Sir Alan Mosley. But I think we've reached such a shift in culture that I think they're ripe for the picking. So if we could even pick up 3%, then maybe, see what I did there? Then maybe we could make a difference and start changing people's minds. I'm an optimist though, Alan. So
you're not a hopeless, just depressed, cynical, just Yeah, like I am.
I am a type A libertarian
Yes.
anarchist, glass half full. I'm going to change the world. And fuck you if you don't.
Well, now I'll admit to this. While I don't support any politician, I wasn't for Johnson, I wasn't for Weld, I'm not for Larry Sharp, I'm not for none of them. I will say this: I do like nullification. I do like what the 10th Amendment Center does, and I like ballot initiatives as a general rule. Now, if you can get out, if you through your organization you can get out a message, you can say, hey, we want to support this ballot initiative. Hey, we think. I know pot's an easy one, but you know the tide has turned on that. I don't think it's going to be much longer, and pot will just be legal.
Well, unfortunately, in Ohio, there's such a stronghold between the police and the state. And we had the opportunity, which the LP worked for here in Ohio, to pass issue 1, which would just decriminalize marijuana, and we didn't. As a state that's kind of a swing state, we're probably the most backwards in those laws.
Yeah.
But we did make strides, and hopefully we can keep gaining that momentum.
Yeah.
So I think that's super important.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see, at least on that issue, I mean, you can see, obviously. I mean, I think that, I mean, like, you look at Utah, for instance, when Prop 1 passed in Utah, and of course, I think theirs is just is a restricted medical marijuana. But I mean, you're talking about Utah. This is like as deep red conservative of a red state as you get.
It's Mormon as shit.
Yes. I wasn't going to say that, but yeah.
I did.
Yes, it is. So, I mean, I definitely see, I feel like that's an area where good can come of the political process. But I want to stress that there's a difference between political process like ballot initiatives. That's voters, and that's also more, that's state level, that's more local level. So I do support people on a area closer to home voting on initiatives that are going to change regulations in and around where they live versus supporting a person, a candidate.
Right.
I can't imagine I'll ever support a candidate ever again. And in a weird sort of way, that's kind of sad. But in another way, that's an area that I don't dedicate that brain power to that anymore.
Okay, so let me ask you this. If Justin Amash were to run on the Libertarian ticket for president, would you support him in any way?
No.
All right, sweet.
I'm not.
Thank you for your answer.
Yeah, I can't. Well, so of the elected representatives currently in Congress, I mean, Thomas Massey's great. You know, I like Thomas Massey. I think he's a good dude. I think we probably agree on 90+% of things. If Congress were entirely populated by Thomas Masseys, I think we would be way better off. But
right.
I still wouldn't turn around and say, if Thomas Massey ran for president tomorrow, I wouldn't support him.
Okay.
I mean, for one, he wouldn't win.
No.
He's not going to win because he's not promising free stuff. I mean, it's the same old things of the quote of I think it was Madison.
Benjamin. Oh, was it Madison?
Yeah. As soon as people figure out that they can vote from the Treasury. So I mean, it's over. We're past that point. I think where a lot of people get confused is and I know you see this all the time, and as soon as we get done with this point, I want to talk a little bit about your social media skills. Is you deal with people all the time that you'll post a comment, or maybe the 10th Amendment Center says this is wrong or this is right. And you'll see all of these people that'll say, well, if we just get back to the Constitution, then things wouldn't be this way. Yeah. And I'm like, well, but we've always had a Constitution, and we still do, and things are this way. So that can't possibly be it, can it?
Spooner hit it the nail on the head.
So you're a Spoonerite?
Whether the Constitution be one thing or another, either it was, what is the quote, Alan? Shit. Basically, it's basic. It was either it couldn't prevent what happened,
or it was by design.
Complicit. Yeah. It was complicit because it's impotent. Yeah. Really, you can't write something on a piece of paper. It's really cool to recognize rights, but a piece of paper and the government behind it can never secure the rights because the government will always grow itself. What incentive does it have to shrink itself or stay small?
Yeah.
And so I find it very funny. going back to the Constitution, even if by some miracle everybody became a fan of the representative Republican and states nullified federal laws, and we all went back to where states were parents of the federal government, eventually that would grow again.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. And then with the way the world is now and the geography of the country and the way that we're so interconnected through the interweb, that's just never going to happen. It's a really silly idea. Not that it can't be used as a tool. Like you said, I really enjoy what the 10th Amendment Center does. I watched Mike Beharry at the Ohio State House talk to state representatives, and it was really interesting to see him talk about nullification. Number one, the thing that they feared the most was not getting federal funding, which is what all politicians fear, is money.
Sure.
But number two, it was such a foreign idea. They all seemed kind of mystified by it. It was really funny. It was interesting to watch.
Well, we've talked about Brian Kaplan's book, The Case Against Education, a number of times on this show, and one of the things he talks about in a lot of his other writings, similar writings on politics as well, is most people are really only good at one thing, two tops. The blacksmith knows a lot about blacksmithing, but even if he's the smartest blacksmith that ever lived, he probably only is a master at blacksmithing. The overwhelming majority of people are not master level at many subjects. That's just not reality. There's just only so many hours in a day, and you have a job to do. And so why then are we going to be surprised when an elected representative, who now they are voting on things that have to do with, politics and economics and civics and they need to know history, they need to understand law. It shouldn't be surprising that they don't know these things because, and to be fair, most people don't. Most people are not masters at all of those subjects. But two, then to your point about Mike Beharry's talk, is it would frustrate me for those people hearing that talk to be hearing these ideas for the first time because they've never been introduced to them. But then again, that's not surprising though, is it?
No, and it's so funny because these people have been elected on the ideas that they understand government, constitution, state constitution, and there were very few that had any idea of what he was talking. Here's a layman. Obviously, he's professional in what he does. He's knowledgeable. But bringing them ideas that they should know about already. It was very heartening, though. There was a few people in this room that were very interested in it. So I do think they do a worthwhile service bringing these ideas forward. And people that are willing to listen to them are going to be people that affect change much more often, because people that are teachable affect change. People that are firm in their statism and not hearing other voices won't really affect change. They'll just keep going on with the status quo.
Well, I think the other thing, the other place where a lot of, especially traditional conservatives get messed up, is they always think if we go back to X day and time, that's when things were better. Well, let's pinpoint when that is, though, exactly.
Yes.
Now, I would make the argument that if you go back to Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson debating the constitutionality of a national bank in 1791, you have Thomas Jefferson basically taking what we would know of today as originalist position, which is the Constitution doesn't say anything in it about a national bank, therefore we assume that it doesn't have the authority to institute a national bank. Whereas Alexander Hamilton, so this is 1791, where he's writing about the idea of implied powers. And that's where we get necessary and proper clause, also known as the elastic clause. It's where we get the concept of, well, the government is in charge of doing these things, and so it's implied that they can also do these other things in the process of performing those tasks.
But this is where the Constitution is flawed, Alan.
Yes.
Because even though Hamilton is an evil bastard, was he necessarily wrong? Because the founders who wrote this should have specified more, which a document, you can't do that. It could be exponentially, you could be writing for the next century about what a government negative and positive rights. But was Hamilton necessarily wrong, or is the Constitution not a document that can limit federal power, or it can't do it?
Yes.
Yes. Well, oh my God. Okay. But if you go to original intent, I can understand what those founders were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what they were speaking is truth because they thought of the spirit of the Constitution. But how do you say what the spirit is? Because it's just a piece of paper.
Yeah. Well, I think what the constitutional scholar who's an originalist would argue is that you would look to the ratifying conventions. You would look to what was actually debated by the people. Because, you and I would laugh all the time about social contract and I didn't sign shit. Ha, 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 ha.
Yeah.
But these guys actually debated the Constitution. It went to each state's house and they voted to ratify or not. So we can look at those records and we can say, so when they voted on it, they voted on it on the understanding of this. And so by that logic, I would agree that yes, that's what the Constitution means. However, the only reason I bring that up at all is I'm just simply pointing out that the modern day boomer conservative who thinks to themselves, we ought to just get back to this. Well, my smart ass question to them is, get back to when? So I'm making the point that all the way in 1791, just a few short years after the Constitution was first ratified, you already saw these motherfuckers tearing it apart.
Oh yeah.
Not even a decade later, it was already unraveling. So how far back exactly are you wanting to go?
Till the time the last scroll or the last pen hit the paper, basically. That's it.
Yeah.
Because after that, power and human intuition and people wanting to hold power over the people took hold. That's why a piece of paper doesn't do anything, Alan.
So I think the cynic or the Spoonerite would then say, if it was literally a number of years you could count on one hand from the time it was ratified to the time that implied powers
like 6 years?
Their head, If that's the case, then the conspiracy theorists would say that was by design.
I kind of agree with that. I do, in the back of my mind, I want to write a musical about the founders and their conspiracy theory to grow a large federal government. But I have to do that in my spare time because I have a job.
So, Tricia, before we wrap up, is there anything else you wanted to talk about today? Anything of yours that you want to highlight? Any links, any projects you're working on, anything coming up in the future, anything at all?
Sure. So there's something that I'm really passionate about, and I won't go into the semantics of it, but there's a humanitarian crisis in Yemen. So I always say if you're interested in that, I would say go to antiwar.com, libertarianinstitute.com. There's some great writings there, but Save the Children/Yemen is a great way to give money to that. That's a passion of mine. I link it through a lot of things that I do. But also, I'm starting a new adventure with We Are Libertarians Network. So I'll be on their network, and I'm really excited about that. But you can join me at Gingerarchy for a lot of really cool interviews. I'm uploading some older stuff, and I'll be producing a lot more content through there. So follow me there. Follow me on social media. See my spicy memes and my sometimes incoherent statements, but lots of fun. So, yes, definitely.
I like it. I'm gonna minimize you really quick so I can pull them back up for everybody at home.
Okay.
Instagram, Tricia.Stuart. Twitter is at TriciaArchy. That's TriciArcky or CHY, Triciaarchy. Facebook, you can find her, Tricia Stuart. It's at Gingerarchy, and the new website. The new website is
Gingershenanigans.
Gingershenanigans.com. I'm kind of surprised that URL was available.
I know. I was too. I was really happy about it. Only cost me $150, Alan.
Well, there you go. Well, Tricia, we're going to end today's show on this question.
I'm ready.
Now, I'm not going to ask you if a hot dog is a sandwich because you've heard that one. And
we
you,
already
of
know
course,
it is.
understand it's a sandwich, right?
Of course. I'm a real libertarian. Of course.
Yeah. And you've also heard that cereal is a soup.
And it is.
And it is. And that's, of course, a bowl of cereal with milk. The milk is the broth. That's a soup.
Broth.
This is the question for you.
Okay.
Is a Pop-Tart ravioli?
What?
Holy fuck. Yes.
It is.
No.
Exactly so.
You've got to be kidding.
Whoa.
How is that a ravioli?
A Pop-Tart is
It
a piece of ravioli.
So then you're saying an empanada is a ravioli?
Yes.
Or a tortellini?
The pastry has the same properties as...
Yeah, they're both made of dough.
Well, doggone. Listen to that. That's genius.
Oh,
Where does he get such wonderful ideas?
this is true.
That's how you know Tricia's a real libertarian.
There you go.
That's right.
That's right.
We're pretty much going to abolish the state by the end of the day, Alan.
And rebuild it anew in your image. Tricia, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Alan.
Guys, we will be right back after this break. Hey, did you see the playoff games last weekend?
Oh, you're into the sports ball game.
Sports Ball with Mike Meharry and Alan Mosley. SportsBallPodcast.com.
Sports ball is not a libertarian sports show. It's a sports show done by a couple of libertarians.
For when you need your bread and circuses. Your ad could be playing right now, reaching thousands of potential customers. Sadly, it's not, but it could be. Find out how to be an advertised sponsor for The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. Email us at tgsalanmosley@gmail.com.
You're back.
It's a ravioli.
It's a ravioli.
And now you know.
Wow. See, I didn't know there were more of those questions. I mean, I thought there was... I can't believe there are more. Are there more than that? There must be a limited supply of them. I don't know where you get these, and don't let the secret out, but man, that was a good one. I didn't even see that coming.
So the questions come as we need them.
Good.
So she was the first one to get the mythical question number 3. Maybe someday we'll have had a guest who's answered all of those questions before, and it'll be time for number 4.
And only you know number 4. Mm-hmm. See, that's epic.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are.
A hot dog is a sandwich.
Yep.
Cereal is a soup.
And a Pop-Tart's a ravioli.
A Pop-Tart is a ravioli.
And I mean, that's, dude, wow.
That's the only thing anyone's going to remember from this show. That's the sad thing.
No. Her blinky hat, man. That was pretty cool.
At first, I thought it was just like a shiny thing. It was later I realized
dude,
it
had
lights.
lights in it.
There were lights, yeah.
Wow, that was crazy.
Guys, thank you so much for listening to another episode of The Gold Standard with Alan Mosley. You can join us on social media. You can watch this show live as it premieres. And I'm there.
Yeah, you are.
To say hello to people.
Yep.
Yeah.
They can badger you with...
Tricia's usually there, actually.
That's cool.
So she'll probably be there.
That means that anybody watching the show can actually talk to Tricia, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, their chat. That's awesome. You should do this.
What a time to be alive.
Heck yeah, man.
And you know where you can do that?
Where?
Facebook.com/TGS Alan Mosley. You can follow me on Twitter, which is at Alan M. Mosley, but you don't have to do any of that. You can just go to our website, which is thegoldstandardpodcast.com. Consider supporting the show at our donation link there on our website, or by joining our Patreon, which is patreon.com/TGS Alan Mosley. And we will see you next week.